All right, Dad. Now, first thing, love you, but there is never going to be a time that I let this stuff stand. You're going to hear what I have to say about this when you say this shit. Because, first of all, we've had this conversation over and over and over again for 30 some odd years. And it's like, okay, but certain things, inversion propaganda, that is where you take reality and you flip it around on its head. And usually when somebody calls Jews liars, deceitful, or indoctrinating, that's when the inversion is there. And I think you know that. They are showing many Jews who have never read the New Testament. Do you think this is 1920? All religious Jews at one time or another, by the time they finish yeshiva, get around to reading the New Testament with very few exceptions. And the ones that don't, it's because they don't want to. But in the last 25, 30, 40 years, Jews read the New Testament all the fucking time because of the aggressive evangelizing of the groups like the Jews for Jesus and the various Messianic Jewish churches with a Jewish paint job. The deceitful tactics that they use to misrepresent, and they do. Because if you reject the law, you are telling that person that to just let their bloodline as Jews die. Because if you don't have to follow the law because we're not under the law anymore. It's a disgusting phrase that Paul said, a disgusting thing for a Jew to say. More noble for a secular to just say he doesn't give a shit and he's going to do it. But when you actually say it's God's mandate to do it, okay. Forget about my theology. They are surprised. It is totally different from what they have been indoctrinated to reject and believe that they've been lied to. No, Dad, no. We've had this argument, and I have told you why we reject it. We reject it because we're not the ones lying. I'm sorry, we're not. We have a book that you guys, I would not usually other you, but now you're speaking as a Christian and putting a libel against Jews. So I kind of have to for clarity. You're calling Jews liars for rejecting Jesus. No, Dad, no. It's the other way around. The authors of the New Testament were liars. All of them. All of them. I'm sure. I can make that case. But let's just say that a few of them. I'll leave it open that the ones who wrote the first three Gospels were just very wrong. It's possible. It's possible. But no, here's my biggest problem with it. Not just you. Everyone who says the piffle you're saying right here. You call Jews liars, but you never specify what they're lying about, not branch and verse. Because there isn't a lie that we're telling. We tell people what our scriptures say. And what all lately religions, not just Christianity, that came along claiming to be fulfillments of our scriptures that they are incapable of reading because they never bothered to try. Because it's not important to them. Something you've admitted yourself when, I hate to use the word cornered because it implies that I see this as a competition, which I'm not going to hold it against you now, but you accused me of, much like people who argue politics with me accuse me of, even though in both instances I never start the conversation. Even this, I didn't start the conversation. I talked about a national name I use. It was not about religion. The religion comes up. Now, I don't mind if somebody wants to do that, but you're not going to lay out the Jews were lying and the Christian and lied specifically to get people to reject Jesus. Not only is that abysmally stupid, and the idea that the Jews have nothing better to do with our time, first century or now. But self-evidently, it's not the case. The authors of the New Testament lied. I'm sorry. And I know that your friends are going to see this I like the world we are living in, where most of the Christian world are allies of ours. But the problem is, the shit you're saying here, we hear all the time. Never read the New Testament. Dad, get out of your bubble if you're going to talk about this shit. Every Jew is familiar with this shit. The New Testament, what the church teaches, the lies of the Jews for Jesus. And what I mean by that, the scriptures that they use to justify that, starting with the authors of the New Testament, whoever the guy who wrote Matthew was, it wasn't a guy named Matthew. Whoever the guy named Mark was, wasn't a guy named Mark. Luke, and don't get me started on that son of a bitch that they call John. Not John, by the way. We'll never know who they were. And I don't care. The guy who wrote the book of John can go to Christian hell. The shit he wrote. Sorry, I mean this. I hope this doesn't get us into another quarrel. But you're gonna know how I think. You're gonna know what I believe. When you go around saying Jesus is the Messiah, when you go around saying that, okay, whatever. A lot of people believe a lot of stupid things. Doesn't upset me. When you say he is, and the Jews are liars, no. I'm not going to just put on something on TV and forget about it. I'm going to respond to it. Because that's a lie. At least about this. Oh, sure, Jews can lie. But like anyone else can lie. But about this, they're not lying. Alma does not mean virgin. Hara does not mean will become pregnant. Has conceived, is pregnant. The Alma, Ha-Alma, the one you know. Isaiah was not talking in any way about anything that was going to happen in 850 years. He was telling a king about something going on right now. But I'm looking at this and I'm like, we have had this conversation, because usually when I start getting all guidoed out, it's always when you say this shit. First of all, they're surprised that it's totally different from what they've been trained to reject. The people you knew who were believers, who were Jews, every fucking one of them, secular, didn't grow up, didn't go to yeshiva. I know that. I knew that before you told me that. Because nobody that speaks Hebrew, even on a first semester level, forget about 2 semesters, 3 years, can function on a first grade level, can fall for Christianity. I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm not trying to fuck with your faith. I'm not. I understand you need this shit, but we don't. Not only don't we need it, it's an assault on us. Because, like I said, you become a Jew becomes a believer in Jesus as that. You want to talk about indoctrination and lying. It's telling a secular Jew that doesn't know any better that he can believe in this, and because he's a Jewish Messiah, that makes him more Jewish. First of all, they use that phrase. There is no such thing as more Jewish. You're either Jewish or you're not. Jewish heretic is no less Jewish than the most devoted, is no less Jewish than Manis Friedman, Rabbi Manis Friedman, since you know who that is. There is no such thing as less Jewish or more Jewish or half Jewish. You're either Jewish or you're not. Your standing position with the community, with God, inconsequential to whether or not you are. That's why Karl Marx, we have to own him. Harvey Weinstein, we have to own him. Nothing we can do, nothing they could do about it. When you're a Jew for life. The Jews I knew were not Stoic. And, if you knew Harvey Weinstein, you would say your Jews you knew were not rapey. That's have to do with anything. You hung out with fucking secular Jews. The only practicing religious Jew you ever mentioned was Lester, and I'm pretty sure by the sound of it, he sounded in Reform. So religious or not, talk about playing it fast and loose. Got nothing against the Reform. They're raised in families that do Reform. It's their thing. But they're not real hot on making sure their kids can speak Hebrew even remotely fluently, let alone read it, let alone the ancient version of it. And again, this isn't about the schisms that we're involved in, denominational schism. This is simply a fact. The people you knew, the Rosens, the Bergs, the whatever, that were all waving Bibles in the 70s were not raised in religious households, or if they were, they were Reformed and they had no functional education on how to read the things that they called scripture. That's why they fell for this idea that some guy came 2,000 years ago, failed at every bullet point of what a Messiah has to do, except maybe possibly being born in Bethlehem. And even that is not really, there's an argument that that's not even a criteria for the Messiah. Descendant of David? No. It's got to be the dad's line. And according to your lore, Joseph wasn't his father. And there is no, if you're having a baby born from a god, then that breaks any, no, being adopted does not count. When it comes to being part of the lineage to where you can be king, which, by the way, is the other thing. I get into this with the friggin' Lubavitch that believe the Rebbe is the Messiah. Like, the Messiah has to be a king. Not a king in the fast and loose sense of the word, like we said, Elvis is the king. Not because, well, we know God recognizes it. No, fuck that. That doesn't count for shit. The king has to hold office of a king, or he's not the Messiah. I would even go so far as to say that there could never be a Messiah without the monarchy being reestablished. We don't mean... The problem with Christianity in most of its forms, especially this fast and loose bullshit that started in the 20th century, is that a word can mean whatever the fuck you want it to mean. Well, with us, words mean things. And if you're going to say somebody's a king, unless you're being like, you know, a fan of saying, hey, that guy's the king. We don't mean that. He's not going to be commanding any armies. He's not going to be writing. He's not going to make any edicts to pass a law or stop somebody's execution. If you don't hold official power, you're not a king. And Jesus is not a king. Was not a king. Is not a. The fact that he might reign in heaven, even let's just say that's true. Doesn't matter. Words mean things. If a man, I don't care who it is, comes claiming to be the fulfillment of something written down, then he had damn well better be able to back that up, and Yezu can't. I'm sorry. Now, I don't want to shit on this with you. I don't. I don't want to deconvert any non-Jewish Christian. If a Jew, yeah, a Jew has no business in this. There's a reason I call it treason, because it's the effect that it has. That's the end of their Jewish line. And the more Jews that accept Jesus, even if they do it under the guise of Messianic Jews, what's this ridiculous thing? We're all Messianic. They mean one particular Messiah, would-be Messiah. No. And again, I wouldn't get hot under the collar about this if it wasn't for this libel that happens every time. By the way, I knew like a couple days ago you were gonna Jesus smuggle. And that's fine, it is. But you better be ready for what I have to say. And you already, because it got hot last time, we didn't talk for 2 fucking years. That's on you, okay? I never said don't talk to me, it was the other way around. Let's hope this doesn't happen again. I'm cool with it as long as you're ready to hear what I have to say. Because I'm not gonna lie to you. And I'm not even gonna lie by omission to you. I'm just gonna tell you what I think, especially when you say they were lied to. What were they lied to, huh? Were they lied to that Alma actually means virgin? That Hara actually means will become pregnant and not is? No. It's the people that say they mean those things that are lying. Ergo, not only are Christians lying if they know what it says. If you don't know it's a lie and you say it, you're not lying. You're just saying something that's not true. But if you know it, and the authors of the New Testament had to know it, unless they were not Jewish and they were just saying what they heard, which is possible. I don't think the first two were. Second two, probably not Jews. Luke and John, which were not their names. Then you get into another blood libel. Woman stabbed to death. The murder on Austin Street. To put it nicely, the whole nation was Jewish. The whole what nation was Jewish? I'm assuming that's a typo. And it made them pull their shades down in fear. Well, for people around there, made many nasty remarks against just... Whose account is this? I mean, this is... You said you were 8 years old at the time. Whose account is this? Did the Jews come out and say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, we pulled down our shades, and we were just so scared, and we let them just do these terrible things? I don't believe that. And I don't think you believe that. So who said they did? Was it a time of day that people typically draw their shades down? If it was at nighttime, then how do you know they saw what was going on? Were there lights on in the house? Was it happenstance that one or two people? How many pulled their shades down? Who's they? That's the other thing that happens with Jews that hardly ever happens with anyone else. The amount of them is never important. How many people pulled their shades down? Huh? That's not important. Some did it, so therefore they're all guilty. Never mind the fact that it might have been happenstance. That's an important detail to leave out. I will look this up later to find out. Did the cops say they pulled their shades down? Did the girl say it? Is she paying it, is she counting how many? Did she say them all go down at the same time while she was being murdered? But you don't ask these questions. Well, for one thing, you've heard the story your whole life, so you took it at face value. I'm trying to remember the time when when the Jews were accused. They had an ambulance. It was in the late 80s, I think, early 80s, and there was a Jewish man and a black man that were both hit by a truck or something, and the story went, and everyone took it at face value. Even now, that the Hasidic company that owned the ambulance, that made the ambulance specifically for Jews, left the black guy bleeding to die in the streets and took the Jew to the hospital. It's a lie. They still have the hospital records of the black guy that was in that Jewish hospital in New York. It's a lie. It's still being said to this day. And that black man, I don't remember if he lived or not. He was hurt really bad. But they took him to the hospital and they gave him the care that they could give him. Didn't stop him saying that. So I'm sorry. I think this is going to be, when I dig into this, and I will, I think it's going to be the same thing. He said, she said, good enough for me, the Jews, fuck those Jews. Guarantee it. At best, it's going to be hearsay. Okay, but what was your point in bringing it up? That's another thing I don't get. What the hell does this have to do with saying that Jews lied to people? I can't get over this, Dad. I really can't. It's like they are showing many Jews who have never read the New Testament. What bubble are you living in? Any Jew who goes to yeshiva, who's been given an education, a Jewish education, by the time in the West, by the time he reads something other than Jewish material of a religious nature, that's the next thing they read. And I don't understand how you cannot know that, especially since you actually listen to rabbis sometimes, like Friedman and whatnot. Jews, there's nothing you can say to the typical religious Jew about Christianity that they not only don't know, they probably could quote the New Testament better than you. Because what it says is relevant to them, but just for different reasons. This book has been used as an excuse to persecute them, and some of it does. You did it right here. You did it right here. Without giving a specific of what they lied about, except that, and by the way, saying they were taught to reject the New Testament and ergo is lied, that is skipping over the details of the accusation, saying they lied and not saying what about. In court, you call someone a liar with shit like that, it gets thrown right out for a reason. No, Dad, again, rabbis aren't lying when they talk about, they don't indoctrinate. They don't have to. The New Testament impeaches itself. You've admitted that in a conversation you started where you were cornered and said, it doesn't, okay, maybe it doesn't, but it's all about what you are led by the Holy Spirit. Nope. That's not how we roll. That's not how we're commanded to roll at all. That's something people made up later when the Bible didn't fit. It doesn't. It doesn't. And That's what we call damage control. Oh, Jesus is the fulfillment of the Old Testament. And as soon as it turns out that the Old Testament doesn't say anything that could justify that, oh, it's not about that. Now it's not about that. Called moving the goalposts is a better term for it, but it's not important. I forgot what the better term. But essentially, now you're changing the criteria. Tell me what the lie is, huh? That's important when you accuse people collectively of a lie. If the rabbis have ever lied about anything, it was nothing about Jesus. And I'm including the Sadducees in this, I'm certain. Even though none of their writings remain, I don't need them. Because you only have to look at the Greek writings and compare what they quote. And then the next thing, like, you're not the only one that's done this, by the way. The next thing I'm going to say. Oh, the Jews changed the Bible so that it would look like, really, we're going to change our Bible from the corners of from thousands of miles away. We're going to send a telegram in 200 CE, 500 CE. Quick, we got to change our Bible. People are starting to believe that Jesus is the Messiah. Take that part about the virgin birth out. Come on. And they got everyone to do it in Ethiopia and Egypt and Yemen and Germany.
Persia.
Thank you, Persia. They got them to do it in all the way in India. They're like 10 diaspora there. 10 independent, separate diaspora. They got all them to do it. They got the Italkim in Italy to do it. They got all of them. And they got them to burn the original ones. Come on. That's desperate. That's about as desperate as they get. And you said that once. I will leave it past you that you would ever use that defense again, I hope. But I'm mentioning it for a reason. Because let's be honest. When it comes to people between our camps who said, this is the evidence and it leads to this conclusion, and then the other one that says, this is the conclusion, let's move whatever we have to with the evidence to get it to fit that. I'm sorry, it's the church. It's all 2,000 years of it. All. Doesn't matter when you're talking about the Catholic Church, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Protestants, evangelical, non-denominational, I don't give a shit. Every one of them. Because Judaism, Christianity, if it's proven false 100%, doesn't affect Judaism. We don't need it. It's not our concern because it's a Gentile religion. None of our business. I would never actively try to deconvert a Christian. However, if Judaism isn't true, entire bottom of Christianity gets knocked down and falls out. Marcionism will never work. Got people trying to resurrect it now. Got the schmo on my Facebook. He doesn't use the word Gnostic, but that's everything. He literally quotes Gnostic Gospels nonstop. Never. Never. Because the historical reality is Jesus did exist. Yes, I've reversed that opinion of mine. He was not the Messiah. I don't even think he believed he was the Messiah. It's a long story because you have to read the New Testament from the Q document perspective. How many of these things are repeated in other books at the time, in the other Gospels, and does it change? The things that he said, for the most part, are probably, almost definitely, things he said, with a few exceptions. That stupid story about when he was 13 and John, okay, that didn't happen. I'm as sure as Robin Hood. I would more likely believe Robin Hood existed. That was clearly something, because the author of that book couldn't even get the geography of Judea right. That's pretty bad. But the other three, the first two, I'll give it the first two, were probably legit, probably newcomers to the religion shortly after he died. Probably met Paul once or twice. Not written by actual disciples of his, but maybe it's possible. They lied when they said that Isaiah 52 is about the Messiah when it's not. Sorry. Zechariah 52. It's funny though, they quote 52 all the time. They never quote 51, they never quote 53. And they never will. I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm really not. They say all roads lead to Rome. For us, all roads lead to Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, whatever. But the road for Jesus leads to the same place every time. The accusation that the Jews are liars. And it's unavoidable. Because you have to call us liars to justify the lying that the church did to get Christianity going. Because it's a little embarrassing when your religion got started by saying a guy is the Messiah, yet the people who could read the prophecies didn't even give it knew pretty much right away, except for, and even in Christianity, it was the uneducated that followed him, the illiterate. Not people, because higher education only came to some people. It wasn't easy. Usually too busy working. That's why his career springboarded in Capernaum, Hicksville. There's nothing wrong with being an uneducated person. But it says something about your movement when that's the people who got it off the ground. In Christianity, you see, you have this Marxism bullshit. Now, by the way, Marxism came out of Christianity because of this. Oh, that's great because it shows that you don't have to be, it's not about you. That's the other thing about Christianity. It's all about you, whoever you is that you're preaching to. And that's why it has these toxic tendencies like celebrating illiteracy, celebrating the person who is disadvantaged. Well, what does that do? That makes people, when they're young and they hear this, want to be disadvantaged. There's nothing good about that. And if Christianity, but again, I'm not trying to, no, see, now I need to stop because I'm not trying to pull this rug out from under you. I am squashing these accusations that always will come up because the authors of the Bible hated Jews. And don't tell me they didn't. I've read it. The book of John even says the Jews, and they said those awful things. You remember, I don't have to tell you. Forget about what Paul said, especially in the book of Hebrews. Screw that guy. But again, that's me. I'm not a Christian, so I can say that shit. You are, so you can't. That's fine. We don't go around saying that Christians are liars. First of all, because Christians are not collectively liars. We know the authors of the Gospels are liars, but we don't go around saying it. And we can do it now. We're not going to get lynched for it now. But we still don't go around doing it because it's a matter of civility. But you're putting us in a fuck of a corner when you call us that. I know you're not calling me that, but you're calling my people that. It's offensive, but who gives a shit how I feel? It's not important. Fuck my feelings. I love that phrase. People say fuck your feelings, and I do, but I also say fuck my feelings, fuck my comfort. That's another thing that we disagree on gravely. Oh, these things you're saying give no comfort for giving out. Good. That'll get you nowhere. Comfort's for getting up on your feet, for breathing long enough to get the fuck back up on your feet, and then after that you grow up and you be a man and do what you got to do. Beyond that, comfort's gross. It's evil. And that's and it's weird that you find the word stoic. I deliberately put that word in there because I was curious if you would react to that word the way you did last time. That's weird. I have beliefs about why you respond that way to that word, and I'm trying not to be certain about those. But it's telling of the things that have ever gone wrong in your life. And that's it. I've talked too much already. I got to get to bed at some point, and I have some delusional hope that I'm going to be able to edit this real quick and put it up, but we'll see. It's going up though. You'll see it on there, and hope you don't get too pissed at me. Love you, Dad.